Affirmative. Tell them we've had a flameout on both engines. Picture hearing those frantic words crackling over the radio from a passenger jet flying 10 kilometers above the Earth. Those were the desperate, terrifying final transmissions from the cockpit of West Caribbean Airways Flight 708, right before it simply vanished from the radar. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the mystery of Flight 708. We're going to untangle one of the most complex, tragic, and utterly perplexing aviation mysteries of the modern era. We'll be breaking down the flight transcripts, the data, and the meticulous investigative work to figure out exactly how a perfectly healthy commercial airliner could just drop out of the sky. And look, the stakes here could not be higher. When the wreckage was finally located in a remote farming region, the devastating reality really set in. All 160 people on board perished. It literally remains the deadliest aviation disaster in Venezuelan history. A tragedy of this magnitude immediately demanded answers, not just for the grieving families, of course, but for the entire global aviation industry, just to ensure that the commercial flights you and I take today remain safe. Part 1, Midnight Flight to Disaster. To really understand how this happened, we have to look at how this ill-fated journey actually began. Okay, so let's set the scene at Panama's Tocumen International Airport. It's well past midnight. The flight is already boarding 2 hours behind schedule, so you can imagine the stress level for the crew. They're frantically rushing to turn the plane around, but they run into a massive issue. Their MD-80 aircraft is overbooked. It's so packed that even the cockpit jump seat is filled, and 2 flight attendants actually have to be left behind on the tarmac in Panama. On board, there are 152 passengers, mostly French citizens, heading home to Martinique after a vacation. And to make matters worse, as Captain Omar Ospina calculates his takeoff weight, he knows they're flying right into the teeth of heavy hurricane season weather. It's an incredibly heavy, chaotic, and stressful start to the night. Let's look at the timeline to see how this builds. At 1 a.m., they finally take off. Now, because the aircraft is so incredibly heavy with fuel and passengers, they actually can't fly at their optimal altitude right away. They have to start at an initial cruising altitude of 31,000 feet. The plan is to do what pilots call a step climb. Basically, you burn off fuel over the first 40 minutes, the plane gets lighter, and then you step up to your final target, in this case, 33,000 feet, to fly over the worst of the weather. But right as they make this climb into the freezing, turbulent storm, something goes horribly wrong. The aircraft's stick shaker alarm activates, violently vibrating the control column to warn the captain that the plane is flying dangerously slowly. And then, the aircraft begins a sudden, uncontrollable drop, 9,000 feet. In just 30 seconds, the aircraft plummeted 9,000 feet. The pilots are fighting the controls, passengers are undoubtedly terrified, and the air traffic controller in Venezuela, who doesn't even have radar to track them at this point, is desperately trying to figure out where they are and what in the world is happening. Part 2. An international investigation begins. By morning, the absolute worst is confirmed, and the monumental task of finding out why falls on lead Venezuelan investigator, Colonel Lourdes Ramos. What's really fascinating here is the sheer jurisdictional nightmare this crash created. Colonel Ramos is facing an unbelievably complex web of international stakeholders. Check this out. You have a Colombian airline operator. The flight originated in Panama. Almost all the victims were French citizens. The wreckage is sitting in a remote part of Venezuelan soil, and the aircraft itself, an MD-80, is manufactured in the US. The global press is demanding answers, and she has to coordinate with agencies from all over the world just to piece this puzzle together. Fortunately, the very first breakthrough happens right at the crash site. Investigators managed to identify the 4 corners of the aircraft, so the tail, part of the cockpit, and remains of both wings, all relatively close together. This is absolutely crucial because finding the plane intact on the ground immediately rules out a mid-air explosion or a structural breakup in flight. The aircraft essentially hit the ground in one piece, so the huge question is, why did it fall? Naturally, they turn straight to the pilot's final radio transmission. We've had a flameout on both engines. Now think of an engine flameout like the pilot light going out on your furnace at home. The engine is mechanically fine, but the combustion inside suddenly stops, and it just quits producing power. And you know, this was entirely plausible. A previous crash back in 1977 saw a similar aircraft experience a dual-engine flameout just from flying through a severe thunderstorm. So could heavy rain and turbulent winds have literally drowned out both engines on Flight 708? Part 3, testing the flameout theory. Armed with a solid working hypothesis, the international team goes to work to see exactly what happened to those engines. They follow standard protocol with rigorous precision. Step 1, was the fuel bad? They test the exact fuel truck that serviced the plane back in Panama, looking for water or contaminants that could choke an engine. The results come back totally clean. So, step 2, the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board, or NTSB, arrives with engine experts right from the manufacturer. They head straight into the wreckage to examine the actual physical fan blades inside those massive jet engines. And guys, here is where we get a massive plot twist that changes the entire investigation. It's almost unbelievable, but the physical evidence completely contradicts the pilot's desperate radio call. The metal fan blades were heavily bent and damaged in a very specific way. That damage absolutely proved the blades were rotating at incredibly high speeds when they hit the dirt. The engines didn't flame out at all. They were actually operating at very high power right up until the literal moment of impact. Just like that, the main theory is completely debunked. Part 4, Secrets of the Black Boxes. With the engines totally cleared of any mechanical failure, the investigators are back to square one. They have to turn to the aircraft's flight recorders for a new lead. But even getting the data off these boxes proved a bit complicated. Normally, a US-manufactured plane's boxes might go straight to Washington for analysis. However, due to political mistrust at the time between the Venezuelan and US governments, Venezuela mandated that the black boxes be sent to the neutral ground of the French Aviation authorities, the BEA, in Paris. Once in France, investigators finally pull the audio from the cockpit voice recorder, and what they hear is just bone-chilling. Before that radio call about the engine flameout, right as the plane begins its terrifying drop, the first officer screams, "It's a stall, Captain, it's a stall!" The pilots weren't just fighting the plane, they were literally disagreeing in real time about why it was falling. We need to be crystal clear about what this means in aviation. When a pilot says stall, they aren't talking about the engine stalling out like your car in bad traffic. An aerodynamic stall happens when the fast-moving stream of air over the wings gets disrupted. The wings literally stop generating lift, and the plane can no longer support its own weight. It essentially just becomes a falling object. But commercial airliners don't just randomly stall at 33,000 feet when they have perfectly working engines. So, to figure out why the plane lost its lift, the team opens the second black box, the flight data recorder. But they're hit with a massive setback. The tape is severely damaged. While they salvage some information, the most critical data points, the engine pressure ratios, which show exactly how much thrust the engines were providing during the climb, are totally unreadable. They're missing a completely critical piece of the puzzle. Part 5, the ice hypothesis. Without that flight data, investigators have to dive into the meteorological reports, and a final, chilling theory begins to emerge. Remember, the aircraft was flying through a high-altitude storm filled with freezing, wet weather. These are prime conditions for severe icing. If ice quietly accumulates on the wings of an aircraft, it does two deadly things. It drastically increases the weight and drag of the plane, and it actually changes the physical shape of the wing, absolutely destroying its ability to create lift. Now, commercial jets obviously have systems to prevent this. The MD-80 can bleed hot air from its engines and blow it over the wings to melt the ice. But listening back to the voice recorder, investigators hear Captain Ospina make a highly unusual and ultimately fatal decision. As he's trying to step climb to 33,000 feet, he says, "Turn off engine anti-icing, I can't accelerate." See, because the anti-ice system siphons hot air away from the engines, it slightly reduces the engine's thrust. Desperate to get just a little more power to complete his climb in this incredibly heavy aircraft, he makes the tragic calculation to switch that vital safety system off. A short time later, as the weather worsens, the first officer clearly gets nervous. The recording catches him asking, "Do I turn it on, Captain?" Pilots usually check a small metal sill outside the window to visually spot ice. The captain replies, "Do we have ice? Put 'em on." But it was a delayed, frantic realization. The ice had already built up. The drag was just too great, the speed dropped, and the plane suffered a catastrophic aerodynamic stall. The captain mistakenly thought his engines had failed because the plane just wouldn't fly, but the engines were actually screaming at full power, trying to push a frozen, unflyable wing through the sky. It's really a haunting reality to process, isn't it? An overbooked plane, a demanding weather system, and a captain trying to squeeze just a little more power out of his aircraft to climb. It all compounded into a devastating tragedy. So I want to leave you with this to think about. Did a simple flip of an anti-ice switch, a decision made in the dark of a turbulent cockpit to gain just a bit more speed, ultimately bring down Flight 708? It's a stark reminder of the razor-thin margins at 33,000 feet and how they impact the safety of every single commercial flight we take today. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Until next time, keep questioning and keep learning.
Thank you for watching the Flight Decoder. Subscribe for more authentic aviation investigations. Like this video, share it, and leave your thoughts.